Ya, betul.
Betul.
Okey, bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh dan selamat pagi kepada Dr. Farah dan Dr. Fairuz. So, hari ini kita ada CMA session. Topik is pulmonary embolism lah. Supervised by Dr. Farah. So, as an introduction, the pulmonary embolism is basically defined as occlusion of the pulmonary arteries by a blood clot or anything lah. Can be the embolism of anything. Pulmonary embolism can be detected in approximately 50% of patients with documented DVT lah. Just a fact about that. So the risk factor patient to get the pulmonary embolism is basically involving this triad lah. We call it Virchow's triad of thrombosis, which is involving hypercoagulability of the blood, stasis of the blood, and also vessel wall injury. If one of these triad is affected, the pulmonary embolism lah. So basically, risk factor divide into three lah: inherited, acquired, and transient lah. So inherited can be due to antithrombin deficiency, protein C and S deficiency, and acquired, the risk factor is based on the age, history of malignancy, or patient had antiphospholipid antibodies and previous history of VTEs lah before. And the transient, the risk factor is involving patient that had the surgery or trauma involving the lower limbs, patient pregnancy, puerperium, patient on oral contraceptive or hormone replacement therapy, prolonged immobilization of the patient itself, heart failure, acute MI, patient in nephrotic syndrome, and dehydration also one of the risk factors to develop the pulmonary embolism. So patient with the pulmonary embolism will be presented of the symptoms such as a sudden onset of dyspnea or associated with cough, can be together with the hemoptysis. Patient can come with syncope, and also in the worst scenario, the patient will come with cardiac arrest lah, which is the severe PE. And the sign of the patient that develop pulmonary embolism is usually non-specific to the PE itself lah. Patient can be tachypneic, have shallow breath, cyanosis. We can have the pleural rub, tachycardia, and splitting of the second heart sound, and also have the right ventricular heave and also high JVP. So we must know the differential diagnosis based on the sign and symptom that patient develop lah. Since the patient will have the chest pain, the dyspnea, SOB, or the differential diagnosis will be a lot lah. First is myocardial infarction, pleurisy, pneumonia, bronchitis, and also the patient had pneumothorax, costochondritis, and rib fracture lah. So we must exclude all the differential diagnosis to diagnose the pulmonary embolism lah. So how to diagnose? We can, based on the history, blood investigation, and also imaging itself lah, echo and ECG. So firstly, we must know the Wells score lah for the DVT. This is the Wells score used to diagnose to calculate the risk to develop PE lah. So the features involving clinical sign and symptom of DVT, patient has altered diagnosis, heart rate, and so on lah. There's a point there. So if patient got 0 to 1 is considered as low risk, 2 to 6 moderate risk lah. More than 6 is a high risk patient to develop PE. The other investigation beside the history, we can do the ECG lah. The ECG changes we can usually patient had is S1, Q3, and T3, which is the S wave in the lead 1, Q wave in the lead 3, and also inverted T wave in the lead 3. And other finding, patient may have tachycardia lah, incomplete RBBB, and also simultaneous T wave inversion, usually in the inferior or anterior septal leads.
Okay.
Ya, betul.
Tak, saya nak tanya, kalau you dapat S1, Q3, T3 ni, how many percent yang confirm develop PE? Maksudnya dia memang kalau awak nampak ECG ni, is it a pathognomonic of PE?
How many percent?
Faham tak?
Okay.
Ha? How many percent patient yang present dengan pulmonary embolism ada ECG ni?
Oh,
I think Dr. Farah cuba maksudkan how sensitive S1Q3T3 ni dan how specific
Yes,
in diagnosing PE.
the sensitivity and specificity.
is it's a non-specific but I think it's around low percentage, around 20 to 30%, is it?
20 to 30%? Hang dapat mana tu?
Actually, I tak sure.
Ni cubaan
Tak
menggoreng.
sure?
Cubaan
Yes.
menggoreng kan ni.
Okay, majority of patients presented with PE will have tachycardia. Okay, ECG dia akan show tachycardia. S1QT-Q3 is not sensitive and specific enough for you to diagnose pulmonary embolism. Okay, so janganlah percaya. Kata, oh patient ni tak ada S1QT-Q3 is, yang ni bukan PE ni sebab ECG dia tak ada S1QT-Q3. Faham tak maksud saya? Okay, so
Faham,
maksudnya kalau tak ada ECG changes ni pun, it's not PE. Orang kata apa, tak boleh nak rule out PE.
Rule out PE.
Tak boleh nak rule out, tak boleh nak rule in lah. Bagi saya, this is useless. ECG changes yang sangat useless dalam PE. Tu je.
Okay. I see it. So next we proceed with the laboratory investigation to diagnose pulmonary embolism. As usual, patient we do the all the baseline FBC, coag, ESR, LDH and ABG, and also the most usually kita ambil dekat patient yang datang, kita akan ambil D-dimer D-dimer is sensitive but not specific to diagnose pulmonary embolism As we know, if let's say if D-dimer is less than 0.5, we can say it's 99% is not PE If more than 0.5, it could be anything that can cause D-dimer not such only PE. Can be due to pregnancy, malignancy or liver disease. It can be congestive heart failure and also renal disease also can cause raise of the D-dimer itself. Next is ABG.
Sorry. Saya ada sedikit isu dengan kenyataan awak pasal D-dimer ni lah.
Okay, Dr.
Okay, D-dimer ni dia, awak kena faham dia adalah rule out test. Dia bukan rule in test. Faham tak apa maksud rule out test dengan rule in test tu? Kenyataan yang bawah tu dah betul dah. Dia basically kalau D-dimer tu negatif, you can up to 95% be confident that patient tu tak ada PE. It's not possible. Tapi bila D-dimer tu positif, it's non-specific. Dia can be anything under the sun lah. So D-dimer ni, therefore D-dimer ni bukanlah satu test yang awak buat randomly. Maksudnya part of your screening tu buat D-dimer. Tak boleh. It's a bad screening test. If you start taking D-dimer for everyone, then you'll end up investigating everyone lah. You akan over investigate everyone. Semua orang akan end up dengan CTPA. So D-dimer ni hanya diambil bila awak ada suspicion of PE. Macam history suggestive and your examination apa semua suggest PE, then you take D-dimer. Tapi if you just, dia tak boleh ambil rutin macam RP apa semua, because then you end up over investigating the patient. So it's test to rule out PE. Dia, so in a sense, dia bukan sensitif. Dia rule out test lah. Nak kata sensitif ni, bila awak kata test tu sensitif, dia sensitif untuk pick up PE. So ada isu dengan D-dimer ni. So jangan randomly ambil D-dimer lah. So kena faham, it's a rule out test. Dia bukan rule in test. Dia berbeza. Betul, rule in test ni fast. Fast is a rule in test. So if ada free fluid dalam fast, you rule in intra-abdominal injury. Tapi kalau tak ada, you boleh rule out. Okay, so benda ni ini antara kenyataan penting lah supaya tidak end up ambil D-dimer for everyone lah. Ya? Okay, teruskan.
Okay. So the other lab investigation that we sorry.
Semi-house ni.
We can is the ABG lah. Patient may have hypoxemia and hypocapnia, and also sometimes PE patient throat eye also can be raised due to overstretch of the heart muscle lah, due to the blockage of the pulmonary system. Sometimes will cause the throat eye to be raised. So next is imaging investigation lah from the chest X-ray. Usually patient in pulmonary embolism shown a normal X-ray. Sometimes only patient can show the few signs and signs lah that suggestive of the PE. Sometimes the patient may have the Westermarck sign, which is the focal pulmonary oligemia. Hampton Hum, as a picture show, there is a peripheral wedge shape density just above the diaphragm, and sometimes the Fishner signs, the prominent central pulmonary artery. And also patient may have the enlarged right descending pulmonary artery, sometimes consolidation and pleural effusion also. But usually PE patient shown a normal chest X-ray. Next, to further investigate the possibility of the PE itself, you can proceed with the CTPA lah. CTPA will show a filling defect within the pulmonary vasculature. This memang tepat lah to diagnose the pulmonary embolism. Other investigation including the echo itself lah. Echo will show right ventricular dilatation, right ventricular will have severe hypokinesia. Also we call it McConnell sign lah. Abnormal intraventricular septal motion and also tricuspid regurgitation. So management in the pulmonary embolism patient, as usual in emergency management, we must resuscitate patient first lah. We make sure patient is stable first. First is ABC lah. We maintain the airway, breathing and circulation. We check all and put the oxygen supplement on the patient. Set IV line all Branula and send all the blood investigation that needed lah. And also if patient in shock, sometimes the severe PE, inotropic support can be started lah, such as dopamine or NOAD. Anticoagulant therapy is one of the thing of the management of the PE lah. Initiation of the anticoagulant during first few days is critical to prevent recurrence lah of the PE and also VT related death. So the use of anticoagulant including the low molecular weight heparin, fondaparinux, or the option in PE which is patient in without hypotension. And if patient is unstable with hypotension bleeding, we can use the unfractional heparin. Parenteral anticoagulant should be given will be given for the first 5 to 10 days lah before we switching or bridging to the oral agent. And then the oral warfarin should be overlapped for 3 to 7 days before the heparin is discontinued, and make sure the INR is more than 2 for more than 2 days lah. And anticoagulant usually will be continued for at least 3 to 6 months to prevent recurrence of the PE.
Kenapa unfractionated heparin lebih useful daripada low molecular weight heparin dalam patient yang bleeding or hypotensive? Soalan. Ini soalan jujur ni. Ni dapat dari mana ya?
Sarawak Handbook.
Oh.
Bukan saya dah cakap Sarawak Handbook tu jangan jadikan dia sebagai reference.
Sarawak Handbook yang warna hitam ke yang warna purple?
Yang purple.
Oh, purple.
Saya rasa saya dah bagi tahu kan?
Ada.
Saya suruh refer sama ada Tim Kinali ke Shelley Ulta ataupun any journal yang reliable lah untuk you boleh cari dalam ESC guideline ke untuk pulmonary embolism kan.
I see. Okay.
Not very good reference lah untuk emergency. Okay. Fairuz tak buka mic.
Tak apa. Saya bukan bercakap dengan korang. Saya tengah bercakap dengan Nazrul di depan saya. So saya ramai orang.
It's okay. Nanti later we go through dia punya history physical mapping semua lah.
Okay. Sambung kan Doktor?
Sila.
Sambung.
Okay. So, this thrombolytic therapy is only started in massive confirmed acute pulmonary embolism lah, which is patient with hemodynamically instability, with patient hypertension and shock, who has any risk of bleeding. So we can use the streptokinase and the urokinase, or RTPA also. And usually the STK can 250,000 unit loading dose for 10 minutes, followed by 100,000 units per hour for the next 24 hours lah. This thrombolytic therapy is only aimed to release the pulmonary vasculature obstruction lah, and by the way to improve the right ventricular efficacy. So the next management is the pulmonary embolectomy lah. The indication is patient in acute massive PE, patient which is had contraindicated to the thrombolytic treatment, which is patient had bleeding prone, and also patient lacking response after we give all the medical treatment and thrombolysis. We can consider pulmonary embolectomy. So the complication of the pulmonary embolism itself is, first of all, instant death lah. Many of the we can see the BID cases can caused by the pulmonary embolism also. Chronic pulmonary hypertension, respiratory failure, and also lead to congestive heart failure, and also recurrence of the PE itself is one of the complication lah. So the prevention
yang pulmonary embolectomy tu siapa yang buat biasanya?
Pulmonary embolectomy.
Siapa yang buat biasanya? Supaya semua orang clear lah, kan? Supaya semua orang jelas.
Supposedly surgical team lah Doktor?
Bukan surgical team.
Bukan team lah.
It's usually either cardiothoracic or interventional radiologist or cardiologist. Maksudnya you have to have facility untuk buat pulmonary embolectomy. So biasa cardiothoracic akan dia buat open embolectomy lah. Kadang-kadang all the interventional radiologists or cardiothoracic ni, cardiologist ni akan buat pakai diorang punya wire-wire ni lah. Tapi maksudnya apa yang saya cuba nak sampaikan, it's not an option everywhere. So your hospital have to have the specific facility untuk pulmonary embolectomy ni lah. So jangan saya nak semua orang clear bahawa saya datang-datang lah, mana tahu datang bawa mak ayah ke, datang bawa ni, datang mengamuk kat ED, saya nak pulmonary embolectomy juga. It's gonna be difficult lah. Semua orang kena clear lah bahawa it's not something that is offered everywhere. Specific centers je kalau kat Malaysia lah. So unless you go to very specific center, you're not gonna have this option of pulmonary embolectomy. Kena clear dengan benda tu lah. Jangan ingat tiba-tiba tulis dalam plan kan, pulmonary embolectomy. It's good to know. Tapi it's not something that's a viable option everywhere. So macam tu je maksud saya. Takutlah patient pula datang kan, saya nak insist on pulmonary embolectomy kan. Awak kena explain lah kat patient kenapa dia tak ada dan sebagainya. So supaya semua orang clear, this is not just an option to plan for pulmonary embolectomy. Tak. Okay, this is something very clear, punya facility, specific facility requirement. Okay, carry on.
So as usual, the prevention is considered the prophylaxis lah. Is the most important measure ensuring patient safety in the hospitalized patient. As we can see, patient is intubated in our hospital. We can start all the Klexane. Biasanya kita tengokkan dekat patient after patient intubated lah. And also patient can be start with compressive stocking, aspirin and any anticoagulant. Management of the risk factor itself, as I mentioned before, and also proper follow up. We can prevent PE from occur.
So bila awak cakap pasal prophylaxis ni, in hospitalized patient mana? Patient mana? Very specific. Dia bukan semua hospitalized patient. Dia ada specific group of hospitalized patient.
Patient that prolonged immobilization lah.
Yalah, kat mana biasanya patient ni berada?
ICU.
ICU satu lagi.
Post-op.
Maksudnya surgical wards
Surgical ward.
both auto and surgery, because a lot of these patient dia banyak risk factor. Kalau lah tak ada medical illness pun, risk factor post major surgery then immobilization. So you have to be actively start anticoagulant, pasangkan stocking dan sebagainya, because this patient memang at high risk of developing PE or DVT. So bila dah jadi surgeon ke, jadi orthopedic ke nanti esok, jangan lupa benda ni lah. And it's one of your KPI lah dalam surgical wards. Carry on.
Okay, betul. That's all for our presentation today.
Okay. Hari ni Hafiz seorang present?
Ya, Doktor. Hari ni saya seorang.
So boleh tanya banyak sikit lah.
Okey, Afi boleh patah balik tak?
So Hafiz seorang boleh belasah ramai sikit lah.
Okey, start dari awal. Okey, next. Candidate for 50 patient official. Okay. This is okay. We'll just try it. Okay. Okay. Acquire apa lagi yang awak rasa related dengan kita punya current condition sekarang?
Benda baru benda baru.
Benda yang kita kena PKP.
Dia tak masuk dalam buku teks lagi. Tapi benda yang anda tengah melalui sekarang.
Yes, COVID-19 is one of the risk factors kan. Untuk dapat pulmonary embolism or thromboembolic event lah. Okay.
Be careful lah patient post COVID ni. Sudden onset SOB.
COVID, you have to rule out pulmonary embolism, one of the cause of the SOB. Okay, even kalau dia tak discharge pun, kalau dalam ward ke ataupun dia surrender kat kita lama dan dia develop macam suddenly tiba-tiba patient takikardi, mula masa mai tu heart rate dia okay, tiba-tiba dia takikardi dia tiba-tiba hari tu PE as well. Okay. Okay, next. Ada satu lagi simptom dia adalah patient complain of palpitation. Okay, or unexplained dyspnea lah. Macam tiba-tiba, pasal tiba jalan sikit je dah penat ni. Macam tu. So, you have to rule out PE as well lah. Okay, next.
Gitu.
Next. Okay. How to diagnose? Okay, next. Ni Dr. Faruza bagi tahu tadi. Ada lagi yang backside tu, boleh buat apa?
Lab investigation ada?
Backside investigation.
Backside investigation. Kak Idi suka buat lah. Dr. Ati suka buat. Ada bisikan dari tepi.
Kan awak selalu duduk tolak apa, nak buat apa?
Oh, scan.
Scan apa?
Scan perut ke?
Scan tengok fetal heart ke?
Echo
ke?
Okay, echo awak nak tengok apa? Kalau PE
patient akan ada right ventricular hypokinesia.
Hypokinesia?
Tidak. Penuh keyakinan di situ tapi salah jawapannya.
Salah.
Right ventricular tu betul dah.
Keyakinan tu saya pujilah.
Apa awak nampak?
Apa?
Sebab awak dapat echo, awak nampak apa yang awak nak cari supaya awak boleh ruling in or ruling out PE.
Nah tu. Yang atas kan.
Dilatation.
Yes, dilatation. Okay.
Okey, cuba.
RV severe hypokinesia ni sebenarnya bukan RV ya. Dia dekat septum. Okay, septum hypokinesia. So awak akan nampak D shape. Okay, D shape tu adalah McConnell signs. Tapi yang ni kalau massive PE lah. Kalau dia submassive ataupun macam dia punya simptom, dia punya PE dia quite subtle, awak tak boleh dapat lah McConnell sign ni. Okay.
Afif, boleh Afif jelaskan tak kepada kawan-kawan yang ada ni, macam mana PE tu boleh menyebabkan right ventricular dilatation on echo?
Pulmonary embolism tu will cause obstruction of the blood flow itself lah in the pulmonary system. So macam heart perlu work harder lah to pump blood into the pulmonary system. So cause right ventricular, and there is backflow of the blood into the back to the heart lah, cause the dilatation of the right ventricular itself.
Okay. So right ventricular dilatation ni, is it a direct or indirect signs of PE?
Indirect.
Semua faham ke? Semua jelas penjelasan Afif tu ke? So secara simpelnya ada block, darah tak boleh keluar daripada right side going to the lung. So dia patah balik, dia menyebabkan right side tu kembang. So soalan ni seterusnya, so PE ni shock jenis apa ya? What type of shock?
Obstructive shock tu.
Ya, siapa yang duduk bisik kat sebelah awak tu?
Tak ada.
Boleh dengar pula tu bisik. Tak apa, okey je. Okay, so PE is obstructive shock Okey lah, yang penting jawapan tu betul. So faham lah penjelasan Afif tu, kenapa PE menyebabkan RV dilatation dan kenapa PE tu jadi obstructive shock lah. And bila ada obstruction, you have to relieve the obstruction lah, to relieve the shock. Soalan last McConnell sign ni tengok dalam view apa on echo, sebab awak mention specifically kan McConnell sign ni.
View.
Echo kan ada apa, parasternal long axis, short axis, apical four chamber, subxiphoid. So right ventricular dilatation ni easy lah kan, parasternal short axis kan. What about McConnell sign? View apa ya?
View apa?
Dah lah sebab awak dah mention. Saya tanyalah. Awak dah tulis kat situ. Saya tanyalah.
Dah banyak kan echo?
Pergi BC hari tu kan?
Sorry, saya tak sure.
Okay. So McConnell sign ni, dia boleh tengok dalam apical four chamber.
Oh, okay.
Right ventricular dilatation biasanya awak tengok dekat parasternal short axis. And that's where you also see D-shape LV dan sebagainya. So apa yang saya nak cakap pasal McConnell sign ni, it's difficult to elicit. Sebab satu, awak kena dapat apical four chamber view yang cantik. Kan? Macam kita demonstrate dalam BEC hari tu, nak dapat apical four chamber yang cantik ni susah. So nak dapat gambar tu pun dah susah. So lepas tu awak kena interpret pula McConnell sign ni. So McConnell sign ni dia bukan science untuk beginner interpret. So kalau awak beginner baru buat echo, unlikely lah McConnell sign awak ni boleh dipercayai. Bukan saya nak cakap awak tak pandai. 10 tahun lagi awak dah asyik buat echo hari-hari, mungkinlah saya percaya. Tapi kalau awak cakap saya buat McConnell sign, saya akan check sekali lagi lah. Compared to RV dilatation, it's easier because it's less parasternal punya view. So itu yang saya nak semua orang clear lah. Jangan second McConnell sign ni, sebab kadang-kadang dapat view chamber yang cantik pun susah. So apatah lagi nak nampak McConnell sign, especially kalau awak pernah tengok McConnell sign tu macam mana.
Betul, tak pernah.
So yang tiga ni, RV, hypokinesia, motion ni, semua ni masuk dalam McConnell sign sebenarnya. Tak, saya nak suruh semua orang jelas je lah supaya kadang-kadang tulis macam senang je.
Betul.
Tapi it's not as easy lah.
Ambil terpakar atau pasal je.
Okay.
Teruskan.
Okay, Afif.
Ya, doktor.
Afif.
Ya.
Okay, apa lagi yang awak perlu buat lah, selain daripada echo, kalau awak dah pegang probe ultrasound tu kan, apa lagi yang awak boleh buat? Scan apa lagi yang awak rasa macam agak perlulah kalau awak nak rule out PE?
Check for any pleural effusion, doktor.
Lagi penting daripada tu kan, awak cerita pasal Wells score lah, Wells criteria lah kan. So apa lagi yang dalam ultrasound yang you boleh buat?
Compression test, betul?
Yes, 2 point compression test lah, nak tengok DVT ke tak kan. Because dia punya kan awak cakap 50% daripada PE ni comes from DVT, betul tak?
Betul.
It travels daripada DVT. Okay, just to share lah the knowledge daripada forensic team. So hari tu saya pergi mortality patient mati sebab PE. So forensic pathologist dia cerita pasal DVT jugalah, yang orang kata apa, one of the cause of the PE. Okay, so DVT ni dia develop daripada the most distal part of the leg. Okay, they start develop from the most distal part of the leg, dan dia akan travel naik ke atas lah. Okay, so the youngest clot is actually the proximal part of the leg. Okay, so the youngest clot ni lah yang akan dislodge dan akan travel ke pulmonary dan menyebabkan pulmonary embolism. Okay.
Okay.
So please lah, kalau awak dah buat echo tu, awak dah pegang probe ultrasound tu, by all means buat jugalah 2 point compression test.
Okay.
Okay, next. Okay lah, basically semua dah disentuh ada treatment apa semua tu. Jangan lupa pregnancy is one of the risk factor yang stand by itself lah. Okay, so kalau patient pregnant tu memang dia ada hypercoagulable state dan senang nak develop. Okay, mind you, kalau kata patient yang ada orang kata apa, PE yang dekat trunk, pulmonary trunk, is quite easy kalau you nak diagnose, sebab macam patient akan dapat hypoxia, patient akan dapat shock, massive PE. Tapi kalau patient yang ada periphery pulmonary artery ni, quite difficult lah, sebab SpO2 dia still maintain, dia tak ada orang kata apa, prominent symptom lah. Okay, so especially kalau patient yang ada COVID-19 ni kan, so you kena bear in mind that mereka ni easily prone dapat pulmonary embolism. So kalau bila dah patient develop kaki, patient ada SOB, please rule out PE lah for one of your diagnosis. Okay. Next. Wow, acute massive PE. Before that, therapy. Okay. Okay, CT scan buat apa? CTPA kan? Ada tak awak sentuh pasal tu?
Ada.
CTPA, okay, let's say lah, kalau hang buat echo, hang nampak McConnell, lepas tu BP pun hypotension. Okay, hang memang confirm lah patient ni memang PE lah sebelum hang buat CTPA. Adakah hang nak start dulu streptokinase ataupun tunggu dulu CTPA result?
Saya rasa kita boleh start dulu kata.
CTPA is the gold standard CTPA gold
Yes.
standard. Maksudnya is confirmation test lah kan. Okay, so adakah macam let's say lah kalau hang minta CTPA pukul 10 tapi tiba-tiba pukul 2 baru boleh buat. So patient ni buat echo dah ada McConnell sign, BP pun dah hypotension. Adakah ada indication untuk nak start streptokinase dulu?
I think kita boleh start streptokinase dulu kan Doktor?
Tanya saya balik. Orang tanya awak, tanya saya balik.
Katalah awak MO di tempat kejadian, EP semua uncontactable. What would you do? You know, EP semua uncontactable. Awak di tempat kejadian.
Okay.
Lepas tu MO lain, houseman lain semua tengok kat awak je. Tunggu decision awak je. To strap or not to strap. What's your decision? And justify lah your decision obviously.
Tak silap. Macam mana Afif? Nak start ataupun tidak? Hang jawapan hang kena confident. Hang kena jadi macam Mak Saleh lah. Salah tak apa, asalkan confident.
Macam jawab soalan Eko tadi.
Okay.
Tajuk dia apa?
I think McConnell sign
Katalah ni McConnell yang memang betul-betul McConnell lah. Tidak ada keraguan lagi.
I think I will start straight the STK lah, streptokinase lah.
And your justification?
I think from the patient presentation dengan McConnell sign tu memang is enough to start streptokinase. I think patient kita sebab nak tunggu CTPA pun lambat. For the sake of the patient itself, I think can start streptokinase first lah.
Yes. Okay. Jawapan kena confident
Dia perkataan yang paling kita kata, bukanlah kata trending, tapi perkataan yang paling magic lah awak nak cakap dalam argument macam ni adalah risk versus benefit. The risk of patient going into cardiac arrest while waiting for CTPA is higher than you know the risk of patient bleeding from streptokinase. So you cerita in terms bila awak guna perkataan risk versus benefit, you know, orang akan macam wah hebat budak ni, pandai menggoreng. So you know, macam Mak Saleh lah. The magic word is risk versus benefit lah. So sometimes bila you nak make any decision, you need to balance the risk versus the benefit, whether the risk outweigh the benefit or benefit outweigh the risk. Then that's how you make your decision. There's no perfect decision, kan? So because kalau nak tunggu CTPA pukul 2, takut patient arrested dulu. So the risk of patient arrested is higher compared to the risk of bleeding secondary to streptokinase. And if streptokinase successful, the risk of the benefit, you know, the benefit of you saving the patient's life. Compare you tunggu or confirm PE, tapi by that time the treatment is macam dah ada irreversible damage dan sebagainya. Okay, so kadang-kadang benda-benda ni time sensitive lah. You have to make the decision based on whatever information that you have available. Dia tak boleh lah ideal nak dapat semua benda dengan segera kan. If you're confident it's PE, history suggestive, echo suggestive and symptoms suggestive, then you need to start to make decision lah. And how you make decision is you balance between the risk and the benefits lah. Okay. Satu lagi, terma massive PE, submassive PE, pernah tertanya tak apa beza massive PE, submassive PE?
Alamak.
Adakah dia merujuk kepada size clot atau dia merujuk kepada apa? Kan pernah orang cakap, oh ni submassive PE, ni massive PE. Ada, tapi sebelum CTPA lagi orang dah label lah massive PE, submassive PE. So obviously bukan berdasarkan size clots. Dia berdasarkan apa?
Patient condition lah.
Condition
is it patient in shock or not kan?
Yes. So any PE yang menyebabkan hemodynamic instability is massive PE. PE yang tak menyebabkan hemodynamic instability is submassive PE. Dia bukan bergantung pada size of the clot. Dia bergantung pada presentation lah, whether patient in shock or not. Okay?
Okay tu.
So, okay. Dr. Farah ada lagi?
Okay, next. Ada lagi tak slide awak? Okay, next. Okay. Lagi. Okay, sebenarnya kan kalau patient-patient yang patient dekat ward tu apa semua, dia orang immobilized tau. So dia orang memang akan dapat higher risk of pulmonary embolism jugalah. Okay. So macam saya cakap tadi lah, you have to have high degree of suspicious sekiranya patient tu develop sudden onset of unexplained hypoxia, unexplained tachycardia. Okay, you need to rule out pulmonary embolism as well. Sebab sekarang ni you all dah ada ultrasound dekat ED. So senang je, bukanlah senang tapi macam it facilitate you lah untuk diagnose patient ni ada pulmonary embolism or not. Okay, sebab ECG tu yang awak cakap S1QT3 tu bukan spesifik pun, bukan sensitif pun untuk PE. Okay.
Tapi itulah yang semua orang cari.
Itu dia orang macam kata, oh patient ni ada S1QT3 lah. Macam pelik lah pula kan, padahal benda tu tak spesifik pun kan. Okay, so tu je lah in term of you nak diagnosis, in term of you nak bagi treatment. Sebab patient boleh mati tau. PE ni one of the main culprit for cardiac arrest. Okay, so jangan main-main lah. Kalau you misdiagnose, you tak diagnose PE, patient boleh mati sebenarnya. Sebab banyak kes yang mortality pun bila buat postmortem je ada PE. Memang akan ada some degree of PE. Okay,
cuba slide seterusnya. Ni kat mana ni? Kenapa PPE bercampur-campur ni? Separuh seorang.
Iklan. Bahaya ni.
Ni partner awak ke apa?
Partner Iklan.
Partner Iklan lah. So, moral of the story, Fif. Apakah moral of the story hari ni? Gambar ni tak ada moral of the story lah.
Tak ada motif.
Moral of the story cerita hari ni, presentation hari ni.
Tak ada moral.
Tak ada moral, MC ada moral. Apa moral of the story presentation hari ni? Take home message lah kepada kawan-kawan.
Take home message, okay. Take home message lah.
Katalah dia orang tak ingat lah apa awak present, apa discussion hari ni. Apa je yang awak nak suruh dia ingat? Mungkin 2-3 benda je awak nak suruh take home message daripada presentation awak hari ni. Benda penting yang dia boleh simpan di dalam dada untuk dibawa terus berjuang ke apa.
I think the take home message, the most important thing, I think if patient came with the symptom of the PE itself and echo is suggestive, by waiting the CTPA, right, which is the gold standard, just start the the anticoagulant, antithrombolytic, the streptokinase
I think kena lagi simple. First,
okay.
Index of suspicion. High index of suspicion. Patient yang present with unexplained shortness of breath, tachycardia, you need to start thinking of PE. Kalau tak fikir, akan tak tanyalah immobility, travel history dan sebagainya. So first, patient yang present dengan acute unexplained shortness of breath, tachycardia, you need to start thinking of PE as one of the differential. Then baru you akan investigate. Yang kedua apa? Tu lah, low index of suspicion lah. Kena terfikir pasal PE. Then baru you can proceed. Yang kedua, jangan randomly order D-dimer. You know, you have to justify. Perlu ke? Kalau awak tak terfikir PE, jangan order D-dimer. You have to have some history or something that suggests PE, and you nak rule out PE, baru you ambil D-dimer. Jangan ambil randomly. Okay? Tu je lah pasal saya take home message-nya. Yang penting. Okay, yang lain tu sambil-sambil treat patient pun boleh tengok dalam smartphone, dose STK ke dan sebagainya. Tapi first PE ni you need to think about PE, baru you akan go along the lines of nak investigate for PE. Kalau you tak terfikir, sampai sudahlah tak terfikir PE. Okay, especially in patient yang acute shortness of breath, tapi everything looks normal. you really need to start thinking of PE kan, macam ECG normal, tachycardia, chest x-ray normal, you know. Nah, then you need to start thinking of PE. Itu saya take home message yang paling penting sekali. Kena terfikir dulu, baru then you can investigate along the lines of PE. Okay.
Dia hari ni ke? Ayuh.
Ha? Apa dia Farah?
Okey, soalan ni pada panel yang lain cik.
Oh, panel ni.
Ha. Husband yang lain tak ada?
Tak ada tu.
Ha? Ha? Pernah dengar ada PERC rule, PERC rule.
PERC rule.
PERC rule criteria to rule out PE. Tak apalah, balik baca lah. Okey, tapi adalah satu yang kalau ada satu je kriteria tu awak tak boleh rule out PE. Tu je lah yang saya ingat.
Dia PERC tu stand pulmonary embolism rule out criteria, di singkatan dia.
Rule out criteria.
Nanti nak Google lah supaya senang nak Google. Saya pun tak ingat. Tapi Google senang. Pulmonary embolism rule out criteria. PERC. PERC.
PERC.
Okay. Apa dah?
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Fairuz.
Okay, thank you. Sis.
Okay.
Thank you semua.